Hi, everyone. It's Ian Heller with Distribution Strategy Group here with a very important discussion. I'm so excited to talk about how distributors are solving supply chain challenges. What a timely topic, such an important topic, such a great group to have this conversation. I'm going to bring them in a few minutes, but first, we got to do a little business. We got to pay the bills. So first, let me tell you about our upcoming conference, the Profit and Productivity Summit for Distributors. Now, this is going to be how to drive productivity and profitability across a distribution enterprise, everything from pricing, order automation, improving working capital management like inventory and accounts receivable, using data to drive decisions, sales and workforce productivity. We got an all-star lineup of speakers already, and we're just adding to it. We've got John Weborg, who's the CEO of Stellar Industrial, Alex Chalsofsky, my favorite economist, who's going to be talking about the economic situation and how you can thrive during good times or bad. Janet Zelenka, one of the smartest people I've ever met in distribution, who's the former CFO and CIO at Stericycle and Ascendant. And we got a bunch more people who are going to be speaking that we will be announcing soon. Go to profitandproductivity.com to get more information and to register. Also, we have our own new suite of software we've just announced. It's called Distributor RX. There's three things. One, Customer Experience RX. This is customer survey software, Net Promoter Score software designed just for distributors rather than just an overall score. It tells you exactly where you need to improve and how you need to improve so that you can improve your customer experience, which is one of the most important ways that distributors differentiate themselves. Employee experience, this is an employee engagement score, same kind of stuff as with customers, only it's about distributor employees. And Demand RX that can help you understand what's the real potential by account and by prospect in your market using a combination of your data and external data. It's an unprecedented system. It's fantastic. And we have to thank Infor, a global leader in business cloud software products for companies in industry-specific markets such as distribution, industrial manufacturing, food and bev, healthcare, and more. Infor builds complete industry suites in the cloud and efficiently deploys technology that puts the user experience first, leverages data science, and integrates easily into existing systems. Infor's mission-critical enterprise applications and services run on the AWS cloud infrastructure, providing for optimal security, agility, and scalability. Infor's modern cloud suite ERP and WMS solutions have distribution industry functionality built in, providing faster time to value while making it easy to drive additional revenue through a wide variety of value-added services, helping you elevate the customer experience and achieve operational excellence. They are obsessed with delivering successful business outcomes for customers and are continually innovating to quickly solve emerging business and industry challenges. Over 67,000 organizations in more than 175 countries, from Fortune 500 enterprises to small and mid-sized businesses, rely on Infor's 17,000 employees and their deep industry expertise to help overcome market disruptions and achieve their business goals. Visit www.infor.com/distribution. That's infor.com/distribution to learn more. Thanks, Infor, for supporting this important work. Awesome. So now it's my pleasure to bring on our panel. Joining me today, Scott Wagner, Director of Industry Transformation at NAED, the National Association of Electrical Distributors, Erica Sherman, President and owner of MC Tool and Safety Sales, and Diego Fonseca, Vice President, Supply Chain and Logistics with Southern Glazers. Come on in, guys. Let's have a conversation, shall we?
Yes.
Absolutely.
How's it going today?
Going great. Good to be with you.
Good.
Fantastic.
Good. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm really been looking forward to this conversation. So let's do some introductions. So tell people where you came from, about what your organizations do, and what your scope of responsibilities is today. Scott, let's start with you.
Sure. So as you said, Scott Wagner with NAED, National Association of Electrical Distributors. And at NAED, I lead our Digital Center of Excellence. And really what we try to do is help our member distributors understand the opportunities with technology and how to integrate, operationalize them into their business. I should mention, I've only been with NAED about a little over a year, but I've been in the industry for 35 years. I started out as an electrician in the trade. I worked for Schneider Electric, one of our manufacturer members, at NAD for about 9 years in various different roles in sales and marketing. And then I've worked for 3 major distributors in Mayer Electric Supply, Rexel, and Border States. And I've done just about everything you can think of under the distributor umbrella. Started at the counter, inside sales, project management, purchasing, operations, analytics, training. It's probably a few things I've forgotten. But I've also always been somebody who straddles somewhere between the business and IT. I'm not an IT guy, but I feel like I'm enough of a nerd that I can talk the talk with those folks.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, one of my favorite things is the chaos of an implementation. I think that's where you really learn about your teams, how to solve real world problems, and there's a lot of fun in that process as well.
Yeah. So really, so you've been with the manufacturer, well, you've been an electrician, so you've been the end customer or the customer who uses the products. You've been with 3 different distribution companies. You've been with a manufacturer, and now you've been with an association. So you've really completed the tour of all the different ways you can be in the industry, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, there's probably a few things I haven't thought of, but yeah, I've run the gambit. I've seen a lot of things in my 35 plus years in the industry.
Fantastic. Well, we're looking forward to learning from you today. Thank you for joining us again, Scott. Erica, you're next. Tell us about where you came from, how you got into distribution, what you do today, and about MC Tool and Safety.
Sure. Thanks for having me today. Yeah, Erica Sherman. I am the president and owner of MC Tool and Safety Sales. We are a distributor of power tools and PPE. We do the hand tools and any safety equipment you might need. Our primary customers are municipalities and construction companies, everything from your large GCs down to your specialty contractors. We love kind of the little niche stuff like sprinkler guys and HVAC, that kind of thing. I started in distribution in 2004 in the beer industry, and I actually worked at Southern Glazers for a hot minute.
Oh, wow. I
So
didn't know
that's,
that. Yeah.
yeah, I didn't quite put those boxes together. I worked through the Pernod Ricard brands over there. It was super fun. I had a great time when I was there, but that's kind of where I got my chops in terms of the money side and the management of the vendor relationships. And now, I've been running this company for almost 9 years. My dad started the company in '02, and he'd been in the industry since the '70s. And I just hopped in with no experience in tools or safety and decided to see what we could do here. My background is marketing. I have an MBA in entrepreneurship and marketing. So it was kind of my goal to be where I'm at. And my favorite part really is helping the customer. And so everything that we do is for that customer relationship, and that's kind of the basis of what we go to business with.
Oh, that's fantastic. Great. Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny how it's a small world, right? I mean, what are the odds that we would just pick you guys at random and you used to work for the same company,
Right. Yeah, I did most of my beverage stuff with the beer wholesalers, which in Minnesota is a
Right.
way different experience than the liquor, but it's super fun. It's a great industry.
I bet that's right. Excellent. Diego Fonseca, welcome to the program. Why don't you go through your background, talk about your company and what you're doing today, please?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for having me. Diego Fonseca, I'm with Southern Glazers. We're the largest distributor of alcohol beverage in the US. So we basically distribute wine and spirits and other kinds of beverage to all the way from like the big chain accounts all the way to small restaurants. And we basically have daily deliverables and to all the distribution points. So our business has an inbound side and an outbound side. So the inbound side is basically we have 2 customers, our suppliers, like a Pernod Ricard, like Erica mentioned, Diageo, all the big, brands, and also very small, wineries, all kinds of different supplier profile. And we buy from them, and then we go to that inbound process to bring the inventory in, and then we have the outbound process to process all the orders that come from all the different types of customers that we get. And both sides of the equation are really important for us. Really, that balance between the supplier availability and the availability for our customers is really what's very unique about Southern Glazers. So I'm the VP of inbound supply chain and logistics. So I own that first leg into the system. And so my areas of responsibility are S&OP and the sales and operations planning, so forecast and demand planning. I have have replenishment and analytics and the execution side, so all the purchase orders from creation to delivery into our divisions, and also the logistics side of it. So arranging freight from Europe, from all different countries, or even within California, different markets domestically, to bring product into our DCs. I started my career like almost at this point 20 years ago in software engineer. So I have a major in computer engineer. I started as a programmer, developer, and then I evolved into consulting. So I was in consulting for 4 years, and this was back in Brazil, where I'm from. Then I came to the US for my MBA. So I had a full-time MBA 2-year program at MIT with focus on operations management, and then I got into Kraft Heinz in the CPG world. So I didn't come from distribution. I was a CPG for 10 plus years, and then recently, close to 1.5 years ago, I joined Southern Glazers, the supply chain side. So I have a lot of different roles in supply chain at this point in time, all the way from optimization, consulting to planning, execution, analytics. And it's good for me to be in a position to kind of combine technology and supply chain, which are the areas where I have a passion for.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, so I love not only the level of experience we have here, but also the diversity of experience, because you guys all have, backgrounds in multiple different industries, or at least combined in multiple different industries. So let me start with sort of the state of the supply chain today question. So I don't know, Scott, you want to start with this? How would you describe the current state of the supply chain in the electrical industry, and what disruptions or trends are you most concerned about right now?
Yeah, I think, we're all still kind of, feeling the impacts of challenges in the past. And I think it has gotten better. Most people would acknowledge that. But I think the fear of more disruption is always there, especially with what's being talked about with tariffs and other supply chain challenges. The other thing is that we had surprises during the really tough times that we never would have anticipated, things like lugs being a shortage that would impact all equipment in the electrical space, and a product that you would think just a little piece of metal you could make in your garage could cause that much disruption. But I think everyone's still kind of thinking about those kinds of things. And I think there's also there's dynamics that we inherited from that. I'll give you an example. People are very protective of schedules, and there's a padding process that goes into everything. So we're still maybe not as honest as we could be with each other, people in the same supply chain, about when we're going to get material, because again, we're preparing for the worst, the disruption we've seen in the past. And there's some fear around that. So I think everyone is trying to do a better job to be more transparent, but I think the challenges are still real, but also I think a lot of it is just the fear of what else could happen.
Yeah, right. That's interesting. So lugs and eggs, two things we never thought would be short of. There's something about the two G's.
Yep.
No, well, no, not with lugs, but what was the story behind lugs, by the way? How we run short on something so basic?
I don't know all the details, but I think, we were very reliant on a couple of providers.
Okay.
And then there was just a crunch of demand, and everything they could produce in a set period of time was consumed, and then we fell behind and no one could catch up.
So it's sort of industry level supplier concentration.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, good. Erica, what's the supply chain look like to you right now in your industry, and which disruptions and trends are you most concerned about?
I think for us, it's the unpredictability of pricing. So I haven't had in my 25 years in this industry, vendors go, price is subject to change tomorrow or yesterday, or, there's just a lot of those little asterisks where you're like, how do I quote something out 30 days, which my customers need, when my pricing might be 10, 20, 30% higher. And I'm working on margins that average in that 32 to 37, sometimes way less, depending on, what section what products we're selling. But I think that's been the hardest part for me, because you used to be able to just, you'd know your prices for the next 6, 8, 12 months, or they give you 30 days. And then the other part of that supply chain is the contractors not going through with projects that they had us quote out. And so in the past, I'd be able to rely on the fact that, yeah, this project is going to go through. I'll order this stuff up now to protect that price. But without knowing that project's going to go through, I can't, I can't order it, and I can't promise my pricing any longer than the vendors do, which bothers me, because I like to be, more reliable.
Yeah, right. So you can't order it, which means you're not sure what price you're ultimately going to pay for it if the project does happen.
Exactly.
Got it.
And ours
So,
aren't material specific usually. I don't do building supplies or materials.
right.
But the safety items or the tools used on the job are all costed towards that job. So it's a
Yeah.
similar problem.
Yeah. Sure. Diego, same question. How would you describe the current state of the supply chain in your industry, and what disruptions or trends are you most concerned about?
Yeah, so post-COVID, we're still trying to adjust to the right levels of volume, especially because we had a huge spike in our industry during that period. And now, the new trends are coming in. We're trying to understand what is really like consumer behavior versus market behavior or changes and shift in the market. So managing inventory, both on the excess side and also on the out of stock side, trying to get the right mix. And with our business, we have a lot of very long lead times, right? Product coming from all over the world, and also vintages and things like that have to be produced, years in advance. It's a tough balance to manage that, the right vintage transitions, the right inventory levels that we have to carry on the thousands and thousands of SKUs that we hold. And then on top of it, we have the tariffs situation that is changing the route to market and some of our lead times, depending on the different things that are happening in the market, different hedge strategies that are being executed there. So those two mixed together, it's creating unpredictability, and we have to react fast to kind of make trade-offs on how much we hold and how to maximize our service. And the last thing I would say is there's a lot of conversations on technology, because we have all these different suppliers that are going through their types of digital transformation, and we are going through our digital transformation. We have major programs happening at the same time. So how we can make sure that we make progress in the short term while preparing for the long term as well with different systems. So a lot going on in that space too.
Yeah, it's funny how even very large companies can get tripped up with supply chain issues, right? So there's one of the world's largest motorcycle manufacturers is a company called KTM, and last year they declared bankruptcy, and they had a year of inventory on dealer floors when they declared bankruptcy. So that means they didn't even turn their inventory once during that year, right? You would think that's a slow train you can see coming, right? So that's like a bad S&OP process, right, Diego? If you're because you should have visibility to that. I mean, as a comparison, Harley Davidson turned their inventory 3.6 times last year, not one, and they didn't have a particularly good year. So these are big, sophisticated companies, but they you take your eye off the ball even a little bit, and man, that working capital associated with bad forecasting in a difficult supply chain environment, it can either kill demand because you don't have the product, right? Or you can go out of business because you've got so much inventory you run out of cash. And so these are real threats. And I know a distributor that had a inventory problem that led them to bankruptcy, and they're a pretty good sized company. This was a few years ago or a couple of years ago. And so these are real issues. And I think, to your point, Diego, sometimes what happened in COVID is a false signal, right? So you guys had, booming demand in COVID, and some industries did, others got crushed, right?
Yep.
Depending on what industry you were in and where you were in the supply chain. And I think this gets to our next question, which is, consumers also experienced COVID, of course, right? So the question is, how have your customers' expectations, and I don't know who wants to take this, so I'm gonna just throw it out there and someone pick it up. How have your customers' expectations changed when it comes to product availability, delivery times, and transparency?
I can pick it up. I think prior to COVID, it was easier to get it almost everything. Post COVID, they're a little bit more forgiving and understanding. And I think what we've learned post COVID is to really communicate with the suppliers so that I can give accurate timeframes. Hey, do you need it now or do you need it in a week? And then that can, I'm not afraid to suggest they go to a competitor because that's what they need for their business. And I'm protecting that relationship. So I think what COVID did for us was really button down our conversations with our suppliers, and then having the right information to give to the customers, and then the customers having the expectation that, yeah, I can wait, or no, I can't, and realizing their needs.
Anybody want to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say one of the things that I've seen changing in the electrical space, prior to COVID, we actually used to talk a lot about value engineering projects. So in other words, you'd look at the list of materials, what you were doing to build an electrical system, and find ways to make it more economical. We get to the price to win the order. And in the throes of COVID and just after, really into now, it's a lot of it is transitioned to more about availability. So you want to change the bill of material, the goods, so that it aligns with what you have in stock or what you can get in a shorter lead time versus these longer lead time products. So there seems to be some more flexibility to design the project around the availability than the price.
Mhm.
Availability engineering.
Yeah.
Wow. That's I'd never heard of that, but it makes perfect sense. Of course that would happen, right?
I was just going to add that, from my side, on the inbound supply chain on the suppliers, we see a lot of more need for visibility and integration, and like how do we let the machine run most of the work instead of touching too much, because there's a lot of components, like we need to be more reliable and more visible to everyone on the availability side, on predictability side. And if you have a situation like a COVID or anything like that that starts to have any kind of disruption, you want to have those signals in front of you so you can make the right decisions faster. And we don't want to be in a situation to be blind and be like, okay, building inventory, overreacting to everything again, and creating disruptions across our supply chain. So that need for visibility and predictability, it's key now.
Well, and I think what we learned from COVID is it's not just COVID, right? So we've had the Houthi
Right.
attacks in the Mediterranean and
Yeah.
Suez Canal issues, and we've had the Panama Canal running out of water, of all things, and it's been sort of one thing after another in supply chains, and I think we have to be ready. One of the things we've learned is anything could happen. Black swan events are not as uncommon as we thought. Now, we do have a question from the audience, and I would encourage other people to ask questions. Actually, now we have 2 questions from the audience. So Deborah wants to know, so I'll throw this out to any panelist. What new technology are you most excited about to deliver enhanced supply chain visibility? Anybody want to take that? Diego, I think you're our technologist.
Yeah, we're working on several different things, and I would say like visibility has different components to it. You can think about visibility as just track and trace, like where's my load, where's my container, where's my truck. But one of the main things that we're trying to build is visibility around alerts of issues that we call leading issues instead of lagging issues. So we're trying to move the supply chain to not just react to a problem after they happen, but like, how can I see that problem coming before they become an escalation and then like just chasing? Because what happens is like, if you just do a reactive supply chain, you have more than half of your team just chasing what happened yesterday. And that tends to kill most of your time and your bandwidth, and you're never able to get out of it. You focus on the medium long term. So you're never planning, you're always chasing. So what I would say, like, visibility on your supply chain signals is a lot more than just a track and trace. It's about how to create business rules and the platforms that can give you reliable alerts for each team. So for example, we are working with some vendors in our internal platforms to come up with types of control tower by department, where I have my replenishment team understanding my potential out of stock risks, working with my logistics team to expedite freight, having processes that will solve those early signals of potential disruptions. Like if I have excess inventory on order, how to overreact before it comes into my inventory. If I have to flip a mode from intermodal to over the road and things like that. So these are alerts that we are building to our teams in those platforms, and AI has a great future on that with learning and understanding from business patterns. That's where we're trying to, we have pilots running and things like that. So we see a great future for this space.
Yeah, so we have another question from Ron Paulson about AI, since you mentioned it, Diego, and he's talking about how he's meeting with clients who are feeling like the data challenges have gotten more difficult, but AI has evolved to the point where it can provide better solutions. What are you seeing? So Scott, I'll start with you because I know you work with this a lot, and you were at our Applied AI conference, and you wrote a really nice write up about it. What are you seeing in terms of people using AI to solve supply chain challenges?
I think, where we are today, what I hear from our member distributors is there's a lot of interest. And I think there's real application opportunity with AI. This is one of those topics, but I think there's still some reluctance to jump in that maybe the right solution hasn't surfaced yet. There's a lot of theory and practice kind of being discussed. There are tools for sure. And I think, something Diego was talking about, that the transparency into the supply chain and communication are really key in all this. I think the other two real big components are the data itself, like what kind of information do we have to work with, and then the technology. And obviously that's where the AI comes in, that if we can take what we've been doing for years, our traditional approach, and enhance it with better tools, that gives us better outcomes. That's the hope, at least, right? So as I've been talking to distributors, the best practice, or what I've encouraged everyone to do, is to be experimental, to figure out which of these options. Don't just stand on the sideline and wait for the right solution to reveal itself, that perfect scenario. If there are 3 tools, try the 3 tools, work with those companies to understand what they do and how it could change how you work every day and give you better results.
Right. Okay. Very interesting. And Erica, you sell to a lot of contractors, is that right?
Yep.
Okay. And so how have you, I mean, you talked about how you're willing to send them to a competitor if that's the right thing to do, which I think is part of the transparency that we're
Yeah.
talking about. But generally speaking, have you changed how you communicate with them about inventory, and have you changed your inventory stocking strategies? How are you trying to survive with the supply chain uncertainties in terms of, how do you operationalize those changes in your business?
Sure. So we're pretty lucky in that we have a pretty robust ERP system that helps us with some of that forecasting. And we do a little bit more just-in-time inventory than someone like a Southern Glazers would. So there's not a whole lot of forecasting other than what we sell last year.
Yeah.
How do we apply, um, but I think the website side of it, which we're in process of working on. We're on the 3rd try for a website for me that has inventory levels. It doesn't connect to my ERP at this point, but some of those tools via AI, via APIs, and working with my ERP system and some outside help that we hire on. I think that kind of transparency for the new buyer is what they need. So I'm going to put a significant investment in that, because I think that's going to be a better tool for communicating immediately, rather than somebody having to call or email or text in an order and ask, and then my sales staff having to go back and say, oh, we're out, it's going to be this. They'll kind of
Yeah.
realize that, and my hope is to have most of that information on the website. Hey, this one's out of stock, it's a 2-week lead time on average, some sort of information so that they know and they can make an educated decision on what to buy. Also collect some of that data to know if I should start stocking these items that they're looking at. So that's how I hope AI is going to help us. I think the cost of implementing something that I don't know is going to work can be prohibitive when you're a small company like ours.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's a way to mitigate some of that, whether it's through kids that are trying their hand at some of this AI stuff, and we can work on an app that wouldn't disrupt my current processes.
Got it. Okay, so let's apply that to the electrical industry, Scott. So what are you seeing with electrical distributors in terms of, their digital adoption, and because Erica's talking about it in some ways in terms of providing transparency to customers about stocking positions, right? I mean, that's what I heard, Erica, right?
Yep.
That they know, they can check the website and know. And Scott, like you and I have talked about before, a lot of people in when it comes to distributor customers, they may use a website all the time, but they're still going to phone the order in or email it in. So the website's super important, way beyond what the actual sales are of it, because people are using it for information. What are you seeing changes in behavior with electrical distributors to try to provide supply chain solutions?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a couple things in that to unpack. What you said about websites. For much of the electrical distributor space, the getting a website, an e-commerce site where someone could go in and get information or maybe enter an order, it's really become the electronic catalog. So when I started in this industry, behind me was the shelf full catalogs of my suppliers, and I would pull those and select parts. A lot of that's done online now, but there still isn't a lot of commerce done online with construction customers and distributors. If you think about the electrical space. But again, like you said, they'll go to the site, look for information, and then call someone for help to put together a package. Because in our space, we sell components, but also complex systems and engineered products and things that have much longer lead time. So you might have a part number versus something that has to be built. What's happening in the space around tools today? I think the area that's had the most traction is quote automation or product identification. And you know a lot of those companies. And so what that addresses, first of all, I think it's easier to understand or measure the ROI. Are you attaining the ROI? So like you mentioned, Erica, if you're going to make an investment, how do I know I'm going to get my return? Well, if you grow your sales or get cross-selling add-ons, that's a great way to start. Also, in our space, electrical, there's a long learning curve for a lot of roles, and it has to do with the depth of product knowledge you have to have and do the position. So something you might look at from the outside being almost entry level, counter sales takes 2 years or more for someone to really get up to speed and be effective in that role. So I think through better technology and assistance, AI assistance during order entry or product selection shortens that learning curve and adds value to the customer in ways that you get a more accurate, more complete order the first time. And again, we're getting those add-ons and cross-selling opportunities in the process. So that's one area that's been, I think, really strong. And it is, I've heard a lot about the more demand planning that, you know, the old school way to buy was the line points. You had reorder point and how much you're going to buy when you hit that. And in my past life in purchasing, I could walk through a warehouse and see the emotional decisions that were made around that. Somebody ran out of something, they bought a year's supply. So making more intelligent decisions with better systems, informed, you know, decision making is really key. And Erica, you talked about that before, arming your people with good tools to make decisions. To me, it's a huge part. And that's where the culture change and change management comes into this as well, is that our business, you know, I hear this all the time. Our distributor folks will tell me, this is not a complicated business. Let's just, you know, we bring stuff in, we ship it to the customer. That's it. Well, there's a lot more there that we can do to make it more efficient for sure.
Flying a plane is easy. You just pull up on this.
That's right.
Right. Yeah, and it's. I mean, you're right that quote and order automation. We had 5 vendors so we had 41 total vendors, technology companies who sponsored our AI conference. 5 of them did quote and order automation. So more than 10%. That was the biggest category of all. So that's becoming.
And it's really cool stuff when you see it. I mean, it's very effective. And you know, I'd be interested if we can get into this a little bit, Ian. But you know, whenever I've talked to distributors about how that's going, you know, they're working with one of those partners, I almost always hear this feedback. Well, my more experienced people are resisting pretty hard. They don't want to adopt because they're the ones that I think see the most threat in those kind of tools that would replace their expertise. And anytime you're talking to salespeople about their process and implementing some kind of change, the first fear they have is, well, how much of my commission is this going to cost me? So I think the best practice in that is to hit both of those things head on, that it's not about replacing you, it's about enhancing or taking the trivial things that you do all day. How much value or satisfaction do you get out of cross-referencing part numbers? Where let's let the machine do that for you, and you can add value.
Thrilling. It's not thrilling.
It's not. And you know, I hear people say, you know, I'm worried that AI will replace me. And the real truth is that, you know, your company probably is not actively trying to replace you with AI today, but your competitor using AI may replace you with your customer if you don't use it first. So a better mousetrap will come along, and if you don't get on the early adoption curve, you're in trouble.
Yeah, look, I say this all the time to distribution leaders. If you fall behind on adopting these breakthrough technologies, you're not going to be employing anybody at some point.
Right.
Right. So, hey, Diego, let's talk a little bit about how you guys are using AI to solve problems and get better performance. Because I know you manage the inbound side of operations at your company, right?
Yes.
Okay. So when you're looking at, you know, I guess, what is that then? Ordering, managing, receiving, do you figure out where to put do you manage inventory and figure out where to put it? I mean, whatever your scope of responsibilities is, how are you thinking about implementing AI to get some of these productivity gains?
Yeah. So before I get there, I just want to say like what Scott and Erica said
of course.
On their side it resonates like 100% to what we are seeing here on those tools and all those things. So 100% agree there. In terms of the forecast process, so what we try to forecast is our depletions. So how much we sell to our customers, because then with that number, we can place orders and carry optimal levels of inventory. What is hard in our industry is that when we buy something for a state, we can't move that product around to a different state. Like it's heavily regulated. So
Right.
I have to buy, I have to be very specific on my accuracy to the item state level, not carrying one pile of inventory for many states, which is very different from where I came from in food, for example, CPG, because I can use one pile of inventory for many states.
Right.
That makes forecasting a lot more critical and challenging for us. And also with the fact that the lead times are pretty long, we have lead times from Europe, from Japan, from New Zealand, countries like that. So you have to predict with a high level of accuracy, very, very far in advance to be able to make those purchases and fulfill orders and not carry excess inventory. We were able to implement within the last, now it's been over a year now, we went live with our machine learning models for forecasting. So we use here, Blue Yonder technology with AWS on top of it, where we house our ML models. So there was a big journey that we went all the way from having nothing and just relying on statistical forecasting in our Blue Yonder system to now have machine learning models in AWS that will feed our Blue Yonder and produce more accurate forecasts. So we saw more than 5 percentage points improvement year over year.
Wow.
With the fact that not only the technology is helping, because now we can have a lot more, let's say, touchless forecasting, and that frees up time for people to actually focus on the discussions that need more detail and manual input on categories that we don't know very well how to predict with the commercial teams. So it's basically a double win, both on the volume that's predictable, we win by not touching it, and by also not over touching it and then actually making it worse, and also free up time to focus on the right thing. So that combined effect is leading us to our highest levels of forecast accuracy like ever in record. We just had the highest number now back in June, so it's been a great trajectory. And we're able to get a team that is a data science team that now continue to develop those models. So the other key on those models is you can't just deploy and just walk away.
Yeah.
You have to constantly understand and see like, okay, something's happening on this trend, this model is no longer working. I have to start refine tuning, testing different models. And those tools like AWS gives us a lot of different options in the menu in the library that we can play with. And our data scientists can figure out what adds value, what doesn't add value. So should we push this to production? Should we just keep it and train more? Should we pull out the drivers? So that is the whole process of the ML there. And it's worked well for us.
Fantastic. That's exciting. That's to hear that you're getting that kind of performance. Now, Erica, we have a question from Tarish. I hope I'm saying that person's name right. How does project-based forecasting differ from simple stock and flow forecasting, and how can AI help if you know?
So for me, project-specific stuff is harder to forecast. So it's just the opportunity to talk to the customer, our end user about when they'll need what products, and then ordering for that so they have it in time for their project to start. So that for us isn't so much a forecasting tool as it's a little bit more proactive. So we're not reactive and trying to get stuff as the project's starting. But in terms of forecasting for us, I think, in our world, it's a little bit like retail in that you forecast what people are going to want to wear for high vis stuff or what, those kind of seasonal specific things that would be project based in Minnesota, with construction being a lot of summertime activity here. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I
no,
hope.
I think, I mean, I was in a similar line of business to you for a long time. And I think, the project stuff, it's all specified. It's all, so you feel like that should be, not as relationship based, and it's totally relationship, or it's very relationship based. And you feel like it should be easier to forecast, and it's harder to forecast. So stuff that I assumed going in turned out to be not right. Is that does that match with your experience?
Yeah, and what's coming into favor in terms of products. So
Yeah.
if they were buying DeWalt one year and now they're all switching
Milwaukee.
over, so now everything's red.
Right.
So now I
Sure.
have to change how and what I buy and who I'm trying to make deals with, because you want to get the customer the best deal, whether it's free goods or depending on the industry, that's kind of how they go to market. So
Yeah. Yeah.
And Ian,
Go ahead,
on
Scott. Yeah.
the electrical space, the difference between, everyday stock flow good stuff and projects is really big because we do our own internal forecasting. A lot of distributors, I say we, but distributors do forecasting on things like pipe and wire and components and fittings and
Yeah.
all that stuff. And then the projects come as they do. You're going to do hopefully a certain amount of your business and project business every year. They're going to be new buildings, new hospitals, new data centers, hopefully every year. But the components, what makes those up, it's probably the biggest ask that suppliers have of distributors is, hey, what are you forecasting to do in project business so they can understand what kind of transformers or switchboards, panel boards, lighting, all that stuff that gets built for the job. So they have some kind of understanding and interacting with our manufacturing members. That's part, again, the conversations they're looking at. How do they meet this massive demand that's around these mega scale projects like data centers and still serve their normal business they would every year? And I've seen some examples from some suppliers. They're building separate facilities just for data center work because there's so much demand, and those companies are basically buying it up for the next foreseeable future. So the project-based forecasting, actually, it really turns into almost just project. It's the first stage of project management.
Yeah.
Is I need this material. Who am I going to source it from? And then it goes from there.
Hmm. Yeah. And are you seeing customers more willing to accept substitutes? I mean, it sounds like you did the availability engineering argument earlier, Scott. So that would imply that distributors are more willing to accept substitutes than they used to be. Do you think is that generally true?
I think it depends, if we're
Okay.
talking about a gear line, a
Yeah, that's right.
switchboard or stuff like that, they may
Yeah.
be partnered with someone.
Sure. That's
So if
yeah.
they couldn't go in a different direction, but I think in general, that's a good way to protect yourself is to have multiple sources that you can get
Yeah.
material from. And that's actually a problem in our space is that we may have the same widget from 6 suppliers because there's a customer
Yeah.
base that likes this one, another customer base that likes this one. And the combined usage of all of those into fewer items would be better, more predictable,
Right.
purchasing effort. But again, it was actually reinforced during COVID that that's a good strategy, which it may not always be. So it's a seesaw. What is the
Yeah.
trend today, and how does it help?
And
Yeah, I
we
know.
find
Go
too
ahead,
that
Matt.
if they need it, I'm sorry, if
No,
they
no,
need
no.
it right away, they're much
Yeah,
much more
exactly.
likely to say whatever you got as long as it's going to work, and it fits. If there's a spec, sometimes there has to be a domestic chain or a domestic
Right.
product. But yeah, if they're in need, and I try and stock what our customers need. And if I can't get one brand, I'll get the second best, but I think there is a good, better, best
Yeah.
hierarchy that we work off of.
And how do these apply in the wine and beverage liquor industry, Diego? I mean, can you do alternate sourcing and product switching and look at domestic alternatives, or are people just so strongly brand focused that you kind of need to give them what they ask for?
Yeah, I would say yes, because it's I can't replace one bourbon with another bourbon. It's more like a question of the commercial team, but we
Okay,
don't
yeah,
see that on our forecasting process of replacing. If I'm out of one, people are going to buy the other one. There's still a lot of brand loyalty,
yeah,
brand strategies. There's a lot of different things that go into the product in the market, and we don't have like the same product that we can get into different sources. Like you can only get like a Campari Aperol from Campari Aperol,
yeah,
Wild Turkey and stuff like that, and Absolute, and all those big brands. They are what they are, so we have to be in stock, and we don't see a lot of cannibalization from our supply chain standpoint. But I'm sure that commercial has different strategies on how to deal with that.
yeah. I bet that's just how it is. I mean, that's my perception of that category, right? Is that people are strongly brand loyal.
Yeah.
So okay, so Erica, there's a lot of tariff volatility, and no one knows exactly what's going to happen. I think. I mean, I read things like, Port of LA and Long Beach imports from China are down 60% or something like that. I don't remember the exact number. And so I keep expecting these shortages to manifest in distribution companies and in retailers. How do you think about this tariff risk?
Well, for us, any cost would be just pushed off onto the customer, and we would maintain our margins.
Yeah.
And I try and let the customer know, and also let them know what substitute products are there. I think our vendors, and particularly in the PPE space, saw this coming. So you've seen a lot of changes in where they're manufacturing and where they're importing from. We're pretty blessed that they were ahead of the game, in terms of some of the new tariffs and stuff that are coming out. They saw the writing on the wall years ago. So from my standpoint, as much as I can work with vendors that are mitigating as much of the risk as possible, I choose to buy more from those um, companies. And then from our side, it really is just being transparent with the customer and just saying when their prices go down, ours will go down. And funny enough, we've seen that. I
Hmm.
hadn't seen that before COVID either. The prices of disposable gloves skyrocketing to $30 a box. And now I can get them again you can get them again for under 20, under 11 if you get the cheap kind. So, and the vendors being able to do some of that price reductions when they fix the supply chain on their side has been really great.
Yeah, I remember walking into a Target right as COVID sort of tapered off and seeing a huge wire bin of the liquid
Hand
antiseptic
sanitizer.
hand sanitizer. Sorry, it
Yeah.
was $1 a bottle. And they were probably $10 a bottle a year
Yeah.
before.
I was
Yep.
making my own during all that, by the way.
Were you really? How do you do that?
Just alcohol and aloe.
Okay, so there's another connection here. It's vodka and
There you go.
I
so-
think Diego's company manufactured a bunch of, or at least some of them that he represents, manufactured a bunch of,
hand sanitizer.
antiseptic
Yeah.
stuff.
There are a lot of suppliers that got into the space because of the alcohol,
Yeah.
but it was all
Mhm.
temporary to that situation. Yeah.
Hey, that's entrepreneurialism, right? Scott, what are you seeing in terms of how distributors are, either preparing for or responding to tariff uncertainty?
I think, everyone is grasping for understanding still. There's been a lot of effort at NAED to put out kind of an update, a regular update on what's the news going on in tariffs today. And I think it's driving attention in this area. And I think that's really important because in the past, what would happen is there was a lot of, Diego, you said this earlier, there was some hedging behaviors out there to speculate on things like, we have volatility in copper pricing traditionally
Sure.
in our space. It just happens. So people would, well, it looks like it's down now, let's buy more. And, that can lead to some bad decisions. So I think the awareness that things are changing and it's a very dynamic environment leads us to, I think, hopefully better, more informed decisions. Again, you got to use your data. It's not all about gut. So I've seen some more of that. I've also had some conversations with members about trying to understand how to look back at their demand. We all recognize the disruption from COVID and how it changed how we look at forecasting, but how to take the effect of inflation out of your measures so you can get a base understanding of what's happened. Are you selling more? Or are you selling less? So, there's lots of ways to do that. And the pure mathematical approach to get at it, I think, leads to distrust of the numbers. So maybe drives us to different behaviors. So I always advocate for measures that are based in, let's say, units or pounds, things that are not going to fluctuate with the cost of the material and to make better decisions. So again, it's finding a new way to think about the same challenges we've always addressed. And I've also seen some behaviors that most distributors, if they're listening, they've probably seen these where you have people that are creating their own part numbers for certain products for this customer because they don't want anyone else to buy it, or so there's a little bit of hoarding in that. So I don't know. I wish there was one kind of golden strategy everybody could employ for this, but it's very complex and it's changing every day. We were talking in the car on the way to the office this morning about the latest news and tariffs. So
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty out there. So if you look forward, and this will be our wrap up question for the three of you, and Diego, I'll start with you. As you look forward, what are your biggest supply chain priorities over the next 12 to 18 months, or whatever time frame you think in?
It's really around let's say, technology developments. I'll say we're putting a lot of focus on the organization, going through that change management that Scott mentioned. So we have new technologies now being implemented. I just talked about the S&OP side, it took us, 6 to 12 months to get people from being anxious and not sure about where ML was taking them to now embracing ML. And then we see the adoption just growing month over month. And we have very ambitious targets to get more and more in there. And we see the planners actually, enjoying it and being part of it and asking for more from a situation where like people are like, oh, they're going to replace my jobs, like what Scott was saying. So that change management component is huge on the technology side. And also how to pick the right technology and apply to the business. Because I think, as you guys have mentioned before, there's a lot of tools and vendors out there that now everyone does AI, right? Their companies are not originally AI, and you say I do AI, and then they come and do a demo here, a demo there. There's a very, very fragmented landscape out there on vendors. So we trying to talk to them and do small pilots or conversations and workshops to see what's the best fit for us in a way that we can be agile and build in increments and not try to, okay, I need to do this project and we're going to stop the business for 2 years to then roll out something massive. So we want to be agile in the technology space, evolve the organization with it. And it's a new culture, change management, and also requires a lot of planning on the medium and long term, as I had mentioned before.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So a lot of your is in sort of the nature of your role as well, but also you've had really good results with artificial intelligence. And so you're going to continue to adopt more of it.
Yes. And this is a good point, is that it's important if your organization wants to go ahead and do more of the IML that you have successful pilots or successful programs that can build that momentum with your leadership, with your teams, and so people can embrace it and actually invest their time and invest money in it, that we can see the future where we're going. If you're just building those models that, oh, I'm using AI, but you don't actually have value creation, then people will see like, oh, I'm spending all this money for no impact, or people are not adopting it. So it's the other thing I would say is like, it's very important to not outsource your AI strategy or tech strategy to just say, I'm hiring this firm, they will figure it out and they'll give me the answer. Because those firms are never going to understand your business as well as you understand. So it's very important to get the leadership and the people that know the business to be part of those discussions to see like, okay, this is a good fit, this is not a good fit. And this requires time, and people will have to dedicate their time to do those discussions. And this is what is hard sometimes, because people will just like, oh, I'm just going to do what I'm used to, my day-to-day job, and actually carving out time to dedicate to this space. And I think that's very important if you want to do the right thing.
Fantastic. Good. Thank you. Erica, let's go with you next. What are you thinking about in terms of supply chain over the next 12 to 18 months? What are your concerns, initiatives, et cetera?
Well, Diego just kind of blew my mind there, and I really loved his little small pilot. So we've been trying to figure out how to adopt some of this AI, but sometimes we're just strapped, right? Like the labor market's ridiculous, can't get people hired and when you do, it's not maybe the right fit. So how do we take it in bite-sized chunks that we can manage? Because that's really important to me as well. And really where to start in terms of what's going to be best. People call me every day with some new AI adventure, and it's going to just try it, just try it. And I'm like, but if I just stick these AI bots in and I don't have a plan around it, I'm going to set myself up for not success, maybe not failing, but just either under promising or over promising and under delivering. And that bothers me more than not implementing anything. So, our strategy is to take it in bite-sized chunks moving into the fall when we're out of our super busy season, and decide the hierarchy of where and what's available and what to use that can build on the next AI adventure.
Great. Okay. And I think I'm hearing this a lot from, distributors, that it's like, well, and I think a lot of people in your situation are trying to get it from their ERP and their existing vendors, because they do understand your business, at least your kind of business, and they're trying to deliver those benefits through their platforms. But I know, we've got Brian Hopkins, who works for us, is an absolute genius with LLMs, and he sometimes has calls with folks and walks them through some simple things that honestly blow their mind. It happens to me with him all the time.
Yeah,
I've done
and
that
I
with
don't
Brian.
think
Yeah, he's great.
I don't think you can rely on the ERP systems. I mean, ours is great, but they don't care about my business like I do, right? So,
Well,
so
sure.
how do I use the information I can take out of that,
Yeah.
use AI to make that better?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really my strategy on it, because I can lean on some people, but the nuances in my business aren't going to be the same as a,
Sure.
$10 million plumbing business or.
Right. Right. Fair enough. Okay, Scott, let's wrap
Yeah.
up with you.
Yeah.
What are you seeing for the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, I was going to say I agree with everything that Diego and Erica have said about, this topic. I mean, there's so many threads we could get into right now. Honestly, I'm kind of buzzing from it. But I think if anybody that knows me that's listening to us talk about this, they'd be surprised if I didn't mention a big initiative we're doing at NAD right now. It's actually in partnership with the Contractors Association, Manufacturers Association, and reps. And we affectionately call it Where's My Stuff? So we're trying to bring transparency to the supply chain so that everybody involved can have better information, more ease of use, and really more of a connected industry. That right now so many things are done by picking up the phone still, sending an email, or going to a website to get a date rather than information flowing between partners. So that's where we're hoping to have an impact with technology in our space.
Nice.
Fantastic. Okay, good. So if you guys could bear with me one more minute, I just want to talk about a couple upcoming programs. We have a show called AI News and Gurus, hosted by our own Brad Hopkins, who I talked about, and Brooks Hamilton, who's a real AI expert. And they made the mistake of inviting me and my business partner to be their guests on July 24th at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. You won't want to miss this mess of a discussion. We're going to have a good time. So please join us then. You can go to distributionstrategy.com for more information. And then on the 30th, my brilliant business partner, Jonathan Bine, is hosting a discussion of state of customer experience and distribution. That's brought to you by Canals, Epicor, Hawk Search by Bridgeline, and Smith Commerce. So those are some great upcoming programs. Hey, Scott, Diego, Erica, thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom with me and with our audience. I really appreciate it. Best wishes to you as you go through these supply chain challenges. And thanks to everyone for attending today.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you
Been a
so much.
pleasure.
All right. Bye, everybody. Take care. We'll see you the next time.
Sounds great.